Welcome to the Journey Podcast, the podcast that's all about you. The podcast that interviews interesting guests and listens to their journeys of where they've been, where they are now, and where they are going. Well, welcome to the Journey Podcast. Today we are joined by Victor Fernandes, and he has a health coaching, Fernandes Health at fernandesfit.com. How you doing today, Victor?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Is doing great. Hey, Victor, I read that you've done health and fitness not as long as you've done some other things. You started this career a little bit later in life after 26 years as working in journalism for Major League Sports and all across North America, the five major sports leagues. And so you have some pretty cool experience and bring some pretty neat things to the table for your clients. And you began serving as a trainer kind of during the time that you were working in journalism. Is that correct?
Or they did overlap a little bit.
Okay.
I worked in sports journalism for 26 years up until about 3 years ago. And in the time, and I was still working, as a sports writer while I was earning my certification as a personal trainer, a health and fitness coach. So that was a busy, half a year or so, to get that all taken care of. But it definitely, you want to talk about two vastly different fields, between the media industry and health and fitness. But the more I go along in this with this new passion of mine, with this new field that I'm in, you start to realize how much they overlap. And in today's age with online, with virtual, with social media, all those aspects of it that I learned, from the onset for many years in my previous field, it definitely helps me when it comes to connecting with people, talking to people, asking the right questions, interacting with people, and content creation, social media, being able to tell people exactly what they need to know clearly and concisely, having some fun with it, along the way. And Lord knows I had a lot of fun doing sports journalism. So when I first jumped from one field to the next, I thought, man, you talk about doing a complete 180. They couldn't be any more different. But the more I've come along in this field as a health and fitness coach, you really realize that there is quite a bit of overlap. And I've taken a lot of the lessons I've learned from journalism and the media industry into my time as a health and fitness coach.
So that begs a question in my mind, and maybe the mind of our listeners. Did the pandemic play a big part in making that jump, or were you already planned this out before the pandemic happened?
I'd already planned that out before the pandemic happened, but the pandemic definitely forced me and many other health and fitness coaches out there to pivot, because let's face it, you couldn't, the bread and butter for so many of us prior to the pandemic was in-person one-on-one or in-person group training. That obviously wasn't an option for quite a long time when the pandemic hit. So you had to find a different way of doing things. And I'm not saying that I jumped into the online game early in the process. I know there were plenty of innovators out there who were doing the virtual side of health and fitness coaching before the pandemic hit, and they were obviously well positioned at that point. But it definitely forced me, whether I was ready or not, to make that pivot. And it's been a learning experience. It's been a growing experience. I've really enjoyed it, and it's opened up a lot of new doors. And I realized that I had a lot more to learn. When we get into any field, we always think we know everything. And obviously, the more we do it, we realize we don't. And I realized there was a lot for me to learn about the health and fitness game that I hadn't learned prior to the pandemic, because you really didn't think about it. You were doing what you wanted to do, helping people one-on-one, helping people in person. You didn't realize that there were other ways to really reach people and help them reach their goals, and not just people that live in the same town that I live in, but rather people across the country, across the globe.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's unique about your business as part of the online aspect. So, can you jump into a little bit more description of your business, your website, and how the program works?
Absolutely. Well, I have, I would say kind of I don't want to call it a mixed bag of things, but there's a good bit of variety with my programming because I still do offer in-person training. That's something that, and let's face it, there's going to be people with a couple different schools of thought where some people truly want to be in-person attention. They're not interested in the virtual side of things. They're not interested of doing it on their own and only having a health and fitness coach talk to them, much like we're talking right now. They want that in-person attention. They feel like that's how they're going to hold themselves accountable best. But there's others that understand, the convenience of it all, the variety of it all, the options, the flexibility that's there with the virtual side of health and fitness coaching. I mean, I can wear so many different hats with the virtual when it comes to virtual training. I can do one-on-one. We could be doing a training session right now, one-on-one, as if we were in the same room and we could be across the country, across the globe. I can do more where I'm more of a mentor and coach as opposed to a trainer, where I provide the tools, the knowledge, the accountability, the encouragement that they need without having to be here one-on-one like we are right now and telling them, do this exercise, do that exercise. They can take it and run with it on their own as well. So I have different levels. I have one-on-one in-person coaching. That's all people want to do. My big ticket item, if you will, is a combination of both, the best of both worlds, where you get the in-person component along with the virtual side of things, which allows me to add the nutritional component to it. It allows me to add the mindset coaching aspect of it, the accountability aspect of it. I also have virtual options where it's more self-driven, where I provide the program, they take the ball and run with it, which is another aspect as well. So that's what I was talking about earlier regarding, the flexibility of it all and just the different options that opens up for you to be able to, to help people transform their lives, help people reach their goals, whereas in the past, it was one-on-one. And one thing I've learned, and I have this discussion with clients on a regular basis, where, when you did in-person training, let's say I'm training you 3 times a week, an hour a day. That's 3 hours out of an entire week. What happens the rest of the week? What happens when we're not together? And in the past, a lot of times that would be nothing really, because the client was left to fend for themselves. They didn't understand. They didn't have the accountability, and the discipline to go and work out on their own. They didn't have the accountability and the discipline to get their diet in order. Because let's face it, without the diet, without your nutrition in order, you can work out all you want 24/7, but without that diet in place, you're not going to get all the benefits from your training sessions. So
that diet's so important.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. I always say it's 80% of the process. We talk about, so when people ask me, hey, what type of exercises should I be doing? I always tell them, you start in the kitchen with exercises in there, making sure that you're nourishing your body in the proper way, because you don't want to waste the work that you've done. But previously and in person, you really didn't get those components included in your programming. It was, all right, I'm working out with you for an hour. Then what? Nothing until I see you the next time.
Yeah, that's super important. I learned that myself. The number one muscle I needed to fix was the ones up here. So
absolutely. I mean, it's I tell people all the time, they may call it physical fitness, but it's so much more mental and emotional than it is physical. And without those two components, without this and without this, without your heart in it, without your mind involved and engaged in it, without the proper mindset, the rest of it simply doesn't fall into place.
So tell us a little bit, was this something you were always interested in? Was fitness like a big part of your life, or was it something that you kind of came to? Because journalism doesn't seem to be one of those types of careers where everybody's working out. It seems to be a lot of desk sitting and lots of time creating content.
Oh, absolutely. It's something I was heavily involved in when I was, I'm 50 years old. I just turned 50. And, when I was in my youth back in the, 80s and late 70s, 80s, going into the 90s, there really wasn't a whole lot of physical fitness like we know it now. Weight training and resistance training and hit training and all that. There wasn't like there wasn't back then what there is now. So now I was very active. I played a ton of sports growing up as a kid. I always loved playing sports, was never really good enough to go play in college or anything like that. But I truly enjoyed playing sports. Then I went off to college and then went through school, graduated, and started in the, in the newspaper industry right away. And you hit the nail on the head. It's a job that it is by far not a typical 9 to 5 job. The hours, especially as a sports writer, the hours are much different. You tend to work, you might work 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. before you work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I spent a lot of evenings traveling from this rink or this field to another one, and it just did not lend itself to being not just physically fit but healthy. Let's face it, I spent a lot of time going through drive-throughs at McDonald's and Burger King and places like that because you had such time constraints. You were running from here to there. You had deadlines to meet. So in your mind, you had too much to do. So what's the first thing that falls off to the wayside? It's your health. And I'd gotten to a point where when I graduated high school, I was about 180 pounds. By the time I want to say within my first 3, 4, 5 years in the journalism industry, I was pushing 250 pounds.
Wow.
So I gained a lot of weight I'd like to say in a short period of time, but it truly isn't. That's a myth. It had happened over a long period of time because the bad habits developed over a long period of time. So fitness came into my life, true fitness like it is now, later in life. It was about the time my youngest son was born. He's 11 now. And I looked at myself and I realized that if I don't do something about the way I feel, my health, the way I look, the way I thought of myself, to be quite honest, I wouldn't be around. Not only would I not be around long enough to see him grow up and experience those milestone moments in his life, that I couldn't be the best husband, the best father that I could be. And I truly wasn't. It's amazing if you ask people to prioritize the different facets, the different aspects of their life, health will never be number one, or very rarely will it be number one, simply because we're so in tune with, we have to do our jobs as parents, as employees, if we're working for someone, or as business owners, that we just don't have time for health. Health becomes an afterthought. It becomes something you squeeze in at the end of the day if you're able to. And we know very well that very rarely does that happen. But in the reality of it all, without your health, if you're struggling with your health, every other facet of life, everyone and everything else in your life gets affected, gets impacted in a negative way. And I came to learn, especially after my youngest was born, that I wasn't being the best husband I could be. I wasn't being the best father I could be. It was affecting my work, to be quite honest with you. And I realized that I had to make some major changes. And if I didn't, I would pay the ultimate price for it as a human being moving forward. And I just, we all have those aha moments, or those moments when we run into a wall and realize that if we don't stop running into that wall, nothing's ever going to change. And that's when I sought out the help of a trainer, and it was the best decision I ever made, because I had the desire, I had the determination, but I didn't have the discipline and I didn't have the knowledge. And those are two very, very important components of the process, because people always ask me, how do you stay motivated? Well, really, you don't, because no one is truly motivated every day. Very few. I have to imagine that maybe world-class athletes, people like that, are truly motivated every day to go and do the work the way they need to do it. So what happens when motivation just wanes? What happens if it's just not there today? That's where discipline sets in. That's where you do the work even when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
But how do you do the work if you don't know exactly what you need to do? When you don't have that knowledge, I can go to the gym and lift weights and do all that, but am I truly doing what's right for me? Am I truly taking the time to do it right, or am I just trying to, speed through it and get the results as quickly as humanly possible? And we know all that happens is that you speed right to failure.
Well, we know those world-class athletes have coaches too. They're
Absolutely.
surrounded by coaches. Their whole life is coaching, So that, in that hanging around those kinds of people inspire you in any way for this?
Oh, absolutely. I know for me, it was as simple as when I hired a trainer, it was as simple as if I didn't feel like getting to the gym to do the work, I knew that she would be there and I knew she would be prepared to work with me. So even if I wasn't going to go for myself, I was going to go to not disappoint her, and that was, and so, Allison Stockton, I'm going to give her a shout out because,
Awesome.
she really helped me immensely, in the couple of years or so that we worked together, because she kept me dialed in. She kept me on point. She forced me out of my comfort zone. She forced me to turn bad habits into good ones. And because that's all this is, I was in the position where I was so heavy and unhealthy because I developed so many bad habits along the way. So the only way to change that is to turn those bad habits into good ones, and she taught me how to do that. And that's about the time when it started becoming a passion. And I started thinking, well, I like to help people. It makes me feel good to help people. It makes me feel good to see people happy. This is a way I can do that. It's sort of my way of paying it forward, and at the same time, I can turn it into a career.
That's awesome.
That's what it was for me, is an opportunity to help people and really turn a passion of mine late in life into a career.
Well, I think that's great, and I don't think 50 is very late in life. So you're just getting started there. So, so you're a couple years into this. What's the one thing that you didn't expect? I'm sure there's been a lot of changes just through the pandemic, and now, if we can call this post-pandemic, there's just been a lot of twists and turns in that. So what's been unexpected already for you?
It's realizing that you have to stay on top of things and you have to stay scheduled. And one of the things that I've learned and my coaches have taught me along the way, is that you have to schedule out your day. And by schedule, I don't mean just, all right, I have a meeting with this person, or I have a Zoom call with that person, or I have a training session with this person. It's scheduling every aspect of your day. So in your schedule, if you eat lunch at 12 to 12:30, you're blocking off that time. If today is social media content day and you're doing it from 1 to 2 p.m., you're blocking off that time, and that's what you're focused on. And one of the biggest obstacles I've had to overcome is I start doing something. Oh, shoot, I forgot to do that. And then you stop what you're doing and go do that, and then realize up and down the line that you've forgotten to do this. Next thing you know, you've got 7 projects going and you haven't completed one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I am as guilty of doing that as anybody. And once I realized that I have to block out my time, and that's got to be my time. And that's including when it's my time to train, when it's my time to hit the gym and work out, it's that time. And understanding that, that time throughout the day is precious, and making people understand, have the same mindset to do the same things. I tell my clients, whatever you have to do today, doesn't matter, more so than work related, family related, whatever it is, put it on your calendar, put it in ink. So it's there. So it's a priority and not just simply an afterthought that gets pushed to the side every time there are things that you think are more important that have to be done.
So you think that idea of multitasking is a myth?
I don't have an issue with multitasking in and of itself. Yes, there's going to be times when you have to handle multiple projects, multiple tasks, that sort of thing. But in order to be efficient, in order to be consistent, and in order to be productive, you have to be able to block your time and focus on one thing. Because let's face it, if you can't focus on something 100% of the time, and you're only giving 50% of your time and your attention, guess what? It's not going to come out the way you want it to be. If I'm only focusing 50% of the time on this particular client, I'm not giving that client the quality service they deserve.
Wow. Yeah, that's good stuff. So, Victor, when would you say is the best time of day for you to get something done? You're a morning person, evening person?
Well, that's something I've had to change along the way, because you're talking about, coming from two vastly different careers, at least schedule and time wise, where when I was in newspapers, I wouldn't be up super early, and by that I would mean I'd be up at like 7:30 or 8, getting the kids off, getting ready to go off to school, because my day was mostly in the evening time. Sporting events mostly played at night. So, my days tended to be later in the afternoon and evening. So I wasn't a morning person by any stretch back then. I was definitely a night owl. It wasn't a big thing for me to be up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, just not being able to sleep or doing work or whatever it may be. Now it's the flip side. Now I like that morning time. And this goes back to the scheduling aspect of things, where I block off that time in the morning after my wife has gone off to work, after my son has gone off to school, after our dog has gone for her walk, and that's also scheduled into my day, from 6:30 to 6:45, 6:57 a.m. Me and Tulip, we're on our walk, and that's again on my calendar. So then when I come back, when we finish all that, I've got that first hour or two in the morning where I can really sit down and start focusing on the nuts and bolts of what I have to do today. Because as the day goes on, then I can really start focusing on helping my clients, giving them what they need, and working with my clients. So definitely that, 8 a.m. to 9, 10 a.m. is key for me. If I can start getting the basic nuts and bolts that I need to get done going, then I can turn my attention to other things that I need to get done. And certainly the opportunity to help my clients, do what they need to do to get the results they want.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. So, you're doing the online coaching. This is a fun question I like to ask everybody on here is, what occupation other than what you're doing right now, would you like to try?
Ooh, man. Okay. I would love to be a professional athlete. That's what I want it to be. I want it to be like a pro, soccer player or baseball player. I think a lot of kids at that age, think the same thing. I would, that's a very good question. I would love, to be honest, right now, one of the things I would love to try and well, not just try, but actually accomplish is to be an author. And I blame my coaches right now, Jonathan Loudermilk and Mark Zalmanoff. I blame them because they put the bug in my ear. And to be honest, it's something I had thought about for years, not necessarily in the fitness realm, but in the media side of things. I'd always wanted to write a book, never did. Never could come up. I could say I could never come up with that one idea that was gold and it was going to sell a ton of books. But frankly, I just didn't have the passion to do it, the motivation to do it. And now that I've launched, my website, fernandesfit.com, and certainly, the social media side of things with my personal Facebook page, Victor Fernandes, and Fernandes Fit LLC on the Facebook and Instagram side. Now I've launched my blog, Fit Family Forum. Say that 5 times fast, and also my podcast, Healthy Bodies, Healthy Families podcast. Now they have me thinking, all right, what's next? So and I already have a program in the mix, and and that I'll kind of tease right now is more of like a membership subscription service that it kind of help people get, basically build that foundation that they need, to on their fitness journey to get the results they want. Because frankly, too many people start off trying to do too much. They're trying to skip steps. They try to build the second floor of the house before they build the foundation in the first floor. So this will help really solidify that foundation that people are looking for. That's going to come here in the early part of the new year. But certainly being an author. Now, do I have an idea in mind as to what I want to write about? I've tossed some thoughts around in my head. Nothing really, thrown against the wall has stuck yet. But I said I blame them for putting that bug in my ear, about writing a book. But that's definitely something. I know my coach just one of my coaches, Jonathan Loudermick, just actually his book just launched here this month, and and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. So I just purchased it myself. So get a chance to read that. But that's something that I've always wanted to do. And now I think I have a really good audience where I can do that. It's just a matter of sitting down and really starting to, I want to say put pen to paper, but really it's, doing it, I can do it this way right now as we're talking right now, and do something like that, because that's something I've really thought about for a long time, just haven't really pursued it until now.
Well, that's great. I can't wait until I have the Victor Fernandes book in my hands.
It might take a little while. I wouldn't hold your breath for too long, but hopefully in the next few years, maybe that'll. I'm hoping that'll come to fruition.
So I'm sure you read quite a bit. A couple of books that you'd recommend to the audience to read. Could be fitness, could be business based. What do you think? Well,
I mean, obviously, it's there's a lot of great fitness books out there, but there's one that I read that it's probably a little bit outside the box, and I'll be honest, I have to thank my wife for this one, my wife Shelley, because she got it for me, and I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was for Father's Day, and when I opened it, I kind of had this quizzical look on my face, like I wasn't quite sure why she bought me this book. It's Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, and I'll be honest with you, I read it in 2 days. And it's essentially it's essentially his memoir. It's talking about his life, but not just his life. He did this. This is how he grew up, but just how every aspect of his life from childhood on up molded him into the person he is now and why he is the way he is. And it's got such an. I mean, we all know Matthew McConaughey, how he is, laid back personality, real funny guy, great actor. And you read his book and you get a sense like he's in the room with you, like he's actually telling you his story, because there's humor in there, there's hard truth, there's real personal stuff in there that you didn't expect to read about. I mean, I've loved watching his movies, but learning more about how he came into those roles, how things unfolded while he was playing those roles, how he developed those characters, really, now I go back and watch those movies with an even greater appreciation for the work he does. So that's certainly, that's certainly one, one book that certainly comes to mind for me. That's kind of off the beaten path. So I have to give my wife serious respect for that one, because that was one heck of a choice. One book I'm dying to read, right now, as I said, my coach is Jonathan Loudermill, Groomed for Greatness, just came out, talking about his story. And if anyone had gotten a chance to listen to my podcast interview, my most recent interview with him, on my Healthy Bodies, Healthy Families podcast, he talks about why he is how he is, and not just why he's successful, but simply because, this is what groomed him to get to where he is today. His childhood, his life, his experiences, his aha moments taught him, molded him to become the person he is today. And that's why he is successful. That wasn't the journey. That's simply the destination. It's everything that happened along the way that's so important, that molded him into the person that he is. My other coach, Mark Zalmanoff, has a book called Making Good Choices. Sounds very simple till you sit down and have to make good choices. It's a lot easier said than done. And he talks about, just the path he's had to travel in life to get to the point where he can consistently make good choices. So when he tells me, hey, make good choices, and he tells me that and everyone on a regular basis, it forces you to stop and think. So it forces you, it's not just a catchphrase, or a calling card or something that, that he hopes people will remember it's him and go buy his book. It's what he believes. It's a part of himself. And he's trying to teach people that as well, that it is all about making good choices. And those choices we make determine who we become as we go along in life.
Well, that's awesome. Those are some great books. I want to check out that Matthew McConaughey one. That sounds neat. It's probably going to put that in my Amazon cart today. So
highly recommend it. It's, like I said, it's one when you read it, it's not what you expect to read, for the better.
Yeah. Okay. So for our listeners, somebody is starting a business today. What is some words of wisdom that you would give them?
Start. That's number one. Start. So many of us, I wrote this in a Facebook post just the other day, where I wrote, I spent so much time in my life preparing, as if I was, preparing for whatever was next, and never once stopped and actually did, just started something. Or I was preparing because when in my mind it was time to do something, I wanted it to be perfect. And and I've had to learn the hard way many times that there simply is no such thing as perfection. If we're striving for perfection, you're not going to find it, because really, what is it? Is this interview perfect? Is my business perfect? Is the person I am in life perfect? And will I reach a day when I say, yes, all those things are perfect? There's just no way of knowing. So to strive for perfection, you're just going to end up frustrated and disappointed more than anything else. Just start. Imperfect action. When I started my podcast, I literally threw it together, the first episode, after kind of thinking about it and outlining it for maybe a week. It's just like, you know what? Let's just do it. And I'll worry about it getting better as I go about doing it. If I sit here saying I'm going to prepare for this and prepare for that, I'll never actually do it. I'll spend more time preparing and none of the time actually accomplishing anything, being productive. So start. Number two, I definitely recommend keeping things simple. And I say that from firsthand experience, because I would complicate things like you wouldn't believe. And I remember, and I learned this lesson a long time ago, and at the risk of sounding like I'm name dropping. I remember in one of my sports writing gigs was back in Erie, PA, covering the Erie Otters of the Ontario Hockey League, a junior hockey league. Players come from that league, go into the NHL. And one of the head coaches back in those days when I was there was Robbie Fatorik, who was part of the 1980 Olympic hockey team. So talking to him, you want to talk about getting into deep philosophical conversations. That's someone you have those conversations with. And I remember him telling me one day the team was going through a rough patch. And he tells me, hockey's real simple. There's 5 players on the ice at the same time. There's a puck. The idea is to take that puck and put it in the opponent's net more often than they put it in yours. That's hockey right there. Now, I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I couldn't possibly put it the way he did. And he says the same thing. He would say the same thing. That applies to all aspects of life. Life is easy. We as human beings make it hard. We overcomplicate things. We think because we're starting on our fitness journey from the bottom and working our way up, that somehow it has to be hard for it to actually work. We have to go on these crazy restrictive diets and make it really hard on ourselves because that's the only way it'll work. And that's simply not the case. the simpler you can make things, the better it's going to be for you, because you're going to feel like you're in control. You're not going to feel like you're overwhelming yourself, and you've got a better chance of succeeding. But once you get it stuck in your head it starts bouncing around in your head and you got to overcomplicate things, that's when you start getting yourself into trouble. Third thing, and to me, it's the most important thing, invest in yourself. And that comes in a lot of different ways. For me, it meant being confident in myself, being patient with myself, believing in myself that I could do what I set out to do, because I made a complete 180-degree about face from one industry to another, going into a field that I knew very little to nothing about, and really going back to school to learn after a quarter century of not being in school. So having to develop study habits all over again. Those were things that when I was at my unhealthiest, I wouldn't even have dreamed of doing. I would have been too scared to do. I wouldn't have been confident in myself enough to do. So invest in yourself, and invest, as the word word states, invest financially. Making sure you're taking the time to learn. Hire a coach. The best thing I ever did was hire coaches. I had Amanda O'Mara in the very beginning of my fitness journey here as a business owner. And now Jonathan Loudermilk and Mark Zalmanoff are taking me to the next level. Because frankly, they've gone through what I'm going through now. They've experienced it firsthand. They've made the same mistakes that I'm making now. They've learned from those mistakes that I'm learning from now. So it's not just lip service. They've been in my shoes. So they understand what it takes in their own unique ways. All three of them are very much different from one another, but in their own unique ways, they've impressed upon me the things we have to do, the basic building blocks of what we have to do to build a business. And when you invest in yourself, you learn these things. You learn that you have to show up every day. You learn that you have to be consistent. You learn, how to change and adjust and tweak and pivot along the way when something's not quite working. For me, we spoke about, the changes that occurred during the pandemic earlier in this episode, in that, for me, I had no choice but to change. I had, the gym I was working at shut down, just like many other businesses across the country shut down. So I was unemployed for 3 months, unemployed for the first time in my life. I'd never experienced that before. So I had to do something, because if I just sat there and did nothing, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Right. So I had to do something. I had to force myself out of my comfort zone. And, the pandemic definitely did that. I know for the pandemic, for so many of us around the country, around the world, has been an absolute tragedy, and it was tough on all of us, but I can honestly say it was tougher on a lot more people than me. What I experienced was far less what so many people have in this country, but it definitely was, in a way, a blessing in disguise for me, because it forced me to do something about it and not just sit on my hands and, play the poor me, pity me game.
Right. Well, and Victor, this has been great. I ask a lot of questions, but maybe there's one question that you wish I would have asked you. Is there a question that you wish I would have asked? And what was that question?
I don't know if there's necessarily a question. I thought you did a great job with all the questions. I think that was great. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Just for me is to impress upon, anyone out there. Look, I started doing this. I moved into the fitness industry at 47 years old, and I'm, I don't want to say I'm competing against other people, because it's really not a competition. Much like anything else, it's a community, and we try to help each other. I'm part of different groups and Facebook groups and all those, and we try to help each other as best we can. And they learn from me, and I learn from them. And a wise man, my coaches, or wise people, I should say, have always told me, if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to find a new room, because you always want to keep learning. And if you're the smartest person in the room, that means the people around you aren't going to grow with you. So they may hold you back. So you want to find people that are going to push you to better yourself. And if there's something you want to do in life, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter whatever, where your life stands right now. Do it. Do it. You know what? It's so much better to fail having tried to do something and given it your best effort, going 100% at it, than it is to sit and wonder and have it gnaw at you. Man, I should have tried that and I didn't. I wish I had. There's no worse feeling than having regret. And I tell people I have one regret in life, that I waited so long to get healthy, because if I hadn't waited so long, maybe I'd be further along than where I am right now. Maybe I would have started in the industry at 27 or 37, not 47. So if there's something you want to do, I don't care if you're my age, younger, older, do it. Just go for it and
start.
That's it. Find people who are doing it too and learn it from them. And ask a lot of questions. That's something I'm good at, having been in newspapers for so long. But just go and do it. It's not going to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be. But just enjoy what you're doing. Do it on purpose. Have fun with it and go for it. Because, if you don't, when will you? We only have this one life. We may as well take advantage of it while we can.
That's awesome. Well, Victor, tell our listeners where they can find you, social media, website, remind us of your business name.
Absolutely. It's Fernandes Fit LLC. And you can find me on my website, which is fernandesfit.com. Social media, I've got a couple of different Facebook accounts. First, you can just search my name, Victor Fernandes. I think it's listed as Victor Fernandes 123. Really creative name, as you can see. And then I have a second, my business page, if you will, is Fernandes Fit LLC as well. And I also have an Instagram page, Fernandes Fit LLC. You can look me up on YouTube as well. I have a bunch of training videos out there too. So there's and my email address, if anyone's interested in health or fitness coaching, you can email me, at ocmdfernandesfit@gmail.com. So that's Ocean City, Maryland, ocmdfernandesfit@gmail.com.
That's awesome. Thanks for being with us, Victor. Go check out fernandesfit.com. You can do the online coaching, or I always think a trip to Ocean City is worth it too myself. Beautiful area, one of my favorite areas of the country. So definitely worthwhile checking out. Thanks for being with us today, Victor. This was great, sharing some of your advice and your wisdom with us. And thanks for sharing your journey with us here on the Journey Podcast.